Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another edition of EdTalk with Pastor Strick. I'm your boy, Pastor Strick, and I'm so happy to be here with you once again. Hope you are having a terrific Tuesday. If you're not having a terrific Tuesday, then flip the script and decide that the rest of your day is going to be a great day. I'm so excited to be here. Listen, you guys know what we ask you to do when you come in. We ask you to hashtag live or replay. Let us know whether you're watching this live. You'll know that because you'll see a small red box in your upper left-hand corner of your screen. If that red box is not there, then you are catching us on the replay. And don't worry, it's just as anointed, I promise you. So whether you're watching us live or on replay, I want to thank you for being here. I'm going to ask you to help me out. Help me to spread this word by participating in a little social media outreach. I'm going to ask you to tag or share this broadcast with someone who you think could benefit for what we're going to be talking about today, which is learning how to tame your team. And so if you know some people who would enjoy hearing this, go ahead and tag and share. Listen, you can put this on your story. You can make this a reel. You can do whatever you need to do in order to help me increase the reach of this word today. And you're going to want to do it because I have a special guest with me in the studio today. In fact, she's going to make history because she's going to be the first ever person that I have had on EdTalk with me. And I'm excited about what we're going to be talking about on today. So once again, if you haven't, also let us know where you're watching from, right? Go ahead and hashtag your city, hashtag your state. I see people here from Louisiana. I see people here from Texas. I got some people here from Florida, some people from Arkansas, of course. Thank you guys so much for always showing up. I appreciate it. And then we're going to get right into today's teaching. Don't want to keep you too long. I know some of you guys are here on your lunch break. And so I want to be mindful of your time, but I certainly want to get into today's subject. Now, as you know, I told you earlier, we're going to be talking about how to tame your team. And why is that important? Several weeks ago, I mentioned to you, and some of you have heard this before because you've been with us more than just these Ed Talks. You've been with us at Fellowship of Champions, or you watched me and my wife with Relationships 101, or you heard me or her speak at one of her live events. We've used these phrases before, but it came as a result of me seeking God during a fast one time, and the Lord told me that there were 4 things that He wanted me to improve upon. There were 4 things He wanted me to improve upon. And those 4 things, and we've mentioned these before, He said, I want you to learn how to tame your thoughts. Right? He wants me to become a master of what happens with the thoughts that come into my mind and what I do with those. He then said He wanted me to learn how to tame my tongue, and Lord knows I needed work with that because I could do pretty good as long as there wasn't some negative pressure being applied. But when that negative pressure was applied, as I mentioned in a couple of Ed Talks a couple of weeks ago, that pessimistic side of me would always rear its ugly head. And so the Lord said, I need you to learn how to tame your tongue. And then last week, we talked about how to tame your temperament. And we talked about temperament. Another word for that is your heart or your emotions, not being controlled or governed by your emotions. And so today we're going to talk about how to tame your team. What is your team? Your team literally is everything that is around you. It's everything that you interact with. And no doubt you've heard me say before that the Lord said to me, if I would learn how to control or to tame, to master, to become a master of my thoughts, a master of my tongue, a master of my temperament, and a master of who is on my team, that there were going to be some results that were going to happen in my life. And this is what the Lord shared with me. I've since shared this with my church. There are other people who have come along and said, you know what, when I started working on these things, the same 5 things that God told you would happen in your life, I can see happening in mine. And so as we get ready to close out this little mini series, let me just share with you real quick before I bring my guest in, those 5 things, because some of you this may be your first Ed Talk. And if so, welcome to all the first time visitors if this is your first time being here with us. But the Lord told me, He said, if you learn to become a master of your thoughts, a master of taming your tongue, a master of your emotions, and a master of your team or your environment, He said, these are the 5 expectations that you can expect to see in your life. These are the practical application or result of the application of those 4 things. He says, number 1, you will have better clarity of purpose. And I don't know about you, but all of us, I think could say that, hey, making sure that we are clear on our daily purpose, our weekly purpose, our monthly, yearly, our life purpose is key to us getting where we need to go. The second thing He said would be improved. He said, I would begin to be a better decision maker. And this was really important to me at the time that the Lord gave me this particular this particular word, because I was managing a group, a team of people. I had at that time, I think it was 8 direct reports. And each of those direct reports had 5 direct reports each. And each of those direct reports had about 20 full-time or part-time educational consultants under them. And I was responsible for that entire team. And when you have a team that large, every decision you make has a large ripple effect, especially when you consider everybody is so unique in their life circumstances that making global decisions has a far-reaching impact. And He said, if you'll learn to tame that tongue of yours and those thoughts and your emotions and the people you have around you, you'll have better clarity of purpose. You'll have better decision making. And then number 3, he said, I have improved focus. Number 4, he said, I would reduce the stress and anxiety in my life. And at that time, I didn't even realize I was suffering from a lot of stress and anxiety, but my body did, right? Because I was getting strep throat 2 and 3 times a year. I was having issues with my back, and I couldn't figure out why. I was having tension in my neck, and it's just because of where I held stress. You may not even realize it, but some of the aches and pains that you have in your natural body is a result of that reduced stress and anxiety that you're carrying. You think that it's not bothering you because you're dealing with it, but it's actually having a physiological effect on you. And then number 5, he said, if I'll do these things, control, learn to tame my tongue, tame my thoughts, tame my temperament, and tame my team, that I would improve the relationships that I had in my life, both at work, in my family, my friends, my colleagues. All of those things would get better, right? And so as a result of that, my wife and I, along with all the ministers at our church and other people, we started adopting this mantra. And here's the mantra that we started talking about. And this is what me and my special guests are going to talk about today. That is that your environment is always working on you. You hear me? Your environment is always working on you, whether you know it or not. Whether you are thinking about it, whether you believe it or not. This is one of those things like you saying you don't believe in gravity. Well, you don't have to believe in gravity for it to be working on you. Because right now, no matter what you're doing, no matter if you're standing, if you're walking, if you're sitting, if you're eating, if you're talking, if you are on planet Earth at this moment, gravity is working on you. Why? Because gravity is in the environment, and the environment is always working on you. And since your environment is always working on you, the question then becomes, what can we do to make sure that we are in the right environment? That is how you tame your team, making sure that you have the right environment. So no doubt you've heard me use that phrase before, but what does it really mean? So let's just look at this real quick. It means that the people, the places, and the things that surround you have a constant and often subtle influence on your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions, and whether you're aware of it or not, is happening right now. It's happening right now. So what I want to do is I want to bring in my special guest. I want her to introduce herself. I want you to tell you a little bit about her and everything that she has going on. And then we're going to get into today's teaching. And some of you are going to realize you need to clean up your environment. There was an old song. They say you need to sweep around your own front door. Some of you are going to have to learn to do some sweeping around your environment if you want your life to improve. So let me do this real quick. Let me bring her in. There she is, Pastor Tenitria Williams. I am so happy to have you. Thank you for joining me. You're making history.
Hello, hello. Thank you. Thank you. You made history. You were my first guest.
And so we're just running around here making history. And so listen, I want you to just take a moment. I want you to tell the people who you are, because I don't assume that just because we've been rocking for 20 years, that everybody knows that. There are different people watching us who may be like, who is this? So let them know who you are, what you do, just whatever you want to share before we get started.
Okay. So my name is Tenitria Williams. As he said, I am by profession a licensed professional counselor and mindset coach. I also in the ministries doing, whatever, working with the youth, helping on the praise team when needed, just kind of different things. But I've been rocking with the Stricklands for, like you said, about 20 years. And I've been a counselor for, I think I counted like 16, 17 years. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing that. Recently, last year, I started my own private practice with coaching and counseling. And I have just started the last 2 months. It's been 3 months now, actually. I've been doing a broadcast called Minding My Mental Health. And everybody on here, I want you to join me on Thursday at the same time, 12 Central Standard Time. And every week we're bringing on people talking about mental health concerning that particular profession or something that's going on with that person. So really what we want to do is break down the stigma in our community of getting help with our mental health. So I've been doing that this week. We're going to actually do it a little bit differently because this is Mental Health Awareness Month. So this week I will be answering questions that people have about their mental health. So I won't have a special guest. It'll just be me, but we're going to be answering all the questions that people can send me through inbox. And we're going to just go through that and kind of give people an idea of what we're talking about when we're talking about mental health.
And how can people find your broadcast on Thursdays, Minding Your Mental Health? I know it's at noon, right? Noon Central Time. Is that right?
Right,
1
right.
o'clock Eastern Time. And so how can they find that? How can they find
It's on my professional page, Tenitria Williams. I think it says public figure, and then also on my personal page, Tenitria Williams. So if you look me up, Tenitria Thompson Williams is my personal page. You will see that it will literally just pop up. You can turn on your notifications so that you get notified. But every week it's been really powerful. It's been really good, getting some insight again into how we can better take care of ourselves mentally. And I think as a person, we want to take care of ourselves holistically. And a part of that is our mental state.
Yeah, I totally agree. And listen, I'm going to say this because she knows this. I'm one of those people who I was all anti counseling and anti laying on the couch and all that. I was in my traditional black man mode. But as I've watched, I call her Pastor Nitra, as I've watched Nitra over the years, really become a person who is not just a counselor, right? But she is a spirit-led counselor. And so much so that when I talk to people, when I get to the point where I have to tap out, I'm like, hey, here's who you need to call. I can only tell you so much, but here's somebody who has some theory and some practice and some, as they say, some education behind her name with all them letters, who can help you out of your situation. And mental health is important. It is important. I think for years we have ignored it. And as a result, it has constituted so many of the problems that we see now. And while I'm not a counselor, I do believe that there are a lot of things that I have learned from you and from a few other people who I really trust in the counseling field about the practicalness of things that people must do if they're going to live a successful life, because you can't just medicate everything. You can't just, right? Wouldn't you agree?
No, I agree 100%. A lot of times I think that's what people want. They just want to take the pill and run out. But if you don't deal with the root issue of whatever that thing is, oftentimes it keeps showing up because you never actually got rid of the root. You just cut off top.
I like that. And sometimes, since we're talking about taming your team, sometimes the root issue can be who you hang around. It can be who is around you. It can be the environment in which you move and have your being in the way people are thinking in that environment. And because our environment's always working on us, you know, I used the example to one of my kids. I said, if you had on a white t-shirt, right, and you walked through a room and in that room was nothing but a cloud of black smoke, right? When you get to the other side of that room, you're going to have that black smoke on you. Now, your shirt we still may be able to tell that it's white, but you're going to have remnants of that smoke on you. And if you keep doing that over and over and over and over, pretty soon we won't know that you had a white shirt on. It's going to look like you had a black shirt on, because that environment is going to get on you and you're going to become a reflection of that environment, right? And
that's a great example.
So one of the things we often say is that your environment is not a passive backdrop to your life, right? We may not think that, but it's not just, we're not walking through life and life is not impacting us. It is. In fact, it's an active force that shapes and molds us. And so what I've done is I've prepared a few questions just so we can have a conversation. I just want to have a conversation around this idea of taming our team, because when the Lord began to speak to me about that, he was like, you really need to pay attention. You know, it's not saying that, you know, we're not doing the whole Drake thing, no new friends. That's not what we're talking about. But we are talking about that everybody is not going to have the same amount of impact on your life. And if you find out that there are individuals who are having a negative impact on you, there's a proper way to handle that. And we're going to get into all of those things today, if that's okay with you. Absolutely.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. So I've prepared the question so that people can actually see it as we talk about it. And so here's the first question. You know, based on your professional life, based on your personal life, can you briefly explain, why having the right type of people on your team, right? We're talking about your environment, in your social circle, whether that's, in your personal or professional life, why that's important for you as an individual and for your growth.
So when I hear that question, my first thought is your team always influences what you deem acceptable and what you deem is possible. Meaning, if you are around people who only make $15 an hour, and no slight to anybody who makes $15 an hour, but if you're around that and that's the cap, you start to think that's an acceptable rate for whatever. But if you get around a team that's doing the same thing and they're making $75 an hour or $2,000 an hour, you start to recognize that what I was once accepting is now no longer acceptable. So I think the people you have on your team begins to shape how you view or what you view as acceptable and what you view as even possible. If you see somebody happily married and you never seen that, now that's a possibility in your mind. If you see somebody who is a single parent who raises a successful child and you never saw that before, now that's a possibility in your mind. And so I think our team really does begin to shift what we accept in life and what we say, no, that's not acceptable. And we've seen that in our own group of people. One story that Pastor Sean shares often, Ralph and April, when they were getting their house, she walked in and said, but you said God told you something bigger. If they had a different person on their team, they possibly would have settled for less than what God told them. I think the other part of that is our team has to be diverse. When you're talking about the right team, if you think about a sports team, it's not just, if you have a championship team, you don't just have a shooters. You don't have just a championship team of defenders. You have a championship team of, all different talents and all different skills. And so when we're talking about surrounding ourselves with the right team, it's people that can encourage us and be that soft place for us to land. But sometimes you need that person who's going to say, now, you know better. Sometimes you need somebody who's going to say, what about this, and giving you different perspectives. And so I think having the right team, again, it just broadens us and it makes us a well-rounded person more than just being stuck in a rut.
Yeah. It's interesting when you mention that. I hear like key words. I hear the word role model, because I hear you talking about having a role model, and we know that anytime that you are expecting to go to another level, you need to have a role model. Jesus is our role model in terms of living our life and how we should move and live and have our being as believers, right?
Right.
But also, I hear you talk about, and again, most likely anybody who makes $15 an hour, if you're with that group, but that group is all of the mindset that this is not where we should stop. That's a difference than being with the group that's making $15 an hour and saying this is all we can do. Those are two different environments, maybe you be doing the same thing. And so just having those role models, people, we talk about all the time how, what is it? We say that, gosh, I lost my, it's expectations. It's not expectations. It's when we're seeing something new. Experience breeds expectation. That's when you experience something new, you have a new expectation, right? So you talked about the $75 an hour. Well, if you're in a team, and I know people don't like to hear this, but if you're the smartest person on your team, if you're the most gifted person on your team, if there's nobody else on your team who's anywhere close to you, then you are the lead to that team. And
right.
While you may help bring other people up, you got to find some people who are above you, or you're going to be stuck at that particular level.
Yeah.
I also hear the word constructive feedback. You talked about the story with Ralph and April, how when they had said, this is what the Lord told us, but then they went to see a house, they had a role model, a mentor who was able to say to them, but you said, God said this. And a lot of times, if we don't realize it, if we don't have the right team around us, we won't get the right feedback. And so when I hear you talking about the importance of having the right type of people on your team, I think about that. And then you mentioned the word diversity. If you got 7 other people around you who all think like you, who all act like you. Where is the diversity to see new ideas? Where's the diversity to do it a different way? If you've got everybody on your team who is just like you really don't need anybody else.
Right.
You don't need anybody else on that team. And so some of the things that the Lord talked to me about was making sure that I had the right people on my team, because the right people will hold you accountable. The right people will hold you accountable, and we all need accountability, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's key, because like you said, the right people are going to say, but you said your goal was to do this. And other people may just let it slide, but the right people are going to hold you to that standard. And I think the beauty of having the right team is they show you they establish a normalcy in your life. Right. So like we were saying, if you're surrounded by chaos, you think that's normal. But when you're around peace, you go, oh, well, no, chaos is not normal. Chaos is abnormal. So you flee from it. But if you think it's normal, you will stay in a place that you think that's normal, because you don't think that there is any escaping of that.
No, that's perfect. And then you talked about sports teams when you was talking about diversity. And I immediately started thinking about a sports team, because the NBA playoffs are going on right now. So I don't usually watch the NBA until it gets to the playoffs. But as I'm starting to watch the playoffs games, what I'm noticing is how players support each other when one of them may not be doing as well. And that's a key to having the right people on your team. If you got a team of people who are used to giving up, used to caving in, used to quitting, used to relinquishing control and just saying, well, que sera, whatever happens to me, happens to me. Even if you don't start off that way, if you hang around a group of people like that long enough,
right,
you'll begin to adopt those same kind of attitudes. And so you need people who you can call, and we talked a little bit about this. No, we didn't. My wife talked about this on Strategies for Success when she was talking about the 8 steps to communion with the Holy Spirit. She talked about grief. And when she was talking about grief for a moment, she said, give yourself 3 minutes to grieve, because she was talking about how Holy Spirit will help you. And this time of year with Mother Day coming up and those kind of things, people start to get sad. And she was like, grief is real, but grief is part of your temper. It's a temperament thing. It's part of learning to tame your temperament, because those are emotions.
Right.
We're not saying push those emotions aside. We are saying that it's okay to grieve, but you need a team of people who go, okay, it's been 3 minutes, or it's been 3 years. We're not going to let you keep having this pity party year after year after year, because you got to live. And you can't spend time grieving so much that you rob the people who are living of who you really are, because you're stuck in this place. So I think about that with having the right people on your team and how they can help you with struggles. Think about your own personal life. Can you think about a time where you can think, you know what, if I hadn't had the right team going through X, I wouldn't have made it?
Oh, man. A lot of things. Even moving here to Georgia. So I live in Georgia, and I moved about almost 6 years ago with my little girl who was 3 at the time. And that was a pretty scary moment, but I always knew that I had people that I could call. I remember actually getting in a car wreck and calling you, and I was like, I think I should just move back. Because at the time it felt like everything was not working, right? And then for me to be in a car accident, like at that moment, I was like, oh, this is the last thing. I'm going back to Arkansas. And you didn't let me sit in that pity. You just went, well, I mean, what you gonna do? Like make a decision. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna at least give it a try. I'm going to see what it's like out here. And so I think even something so small shows you that you can have people that say, hey, you go ahead and give up. Everybody understands it's hard. And then you have other people that'll say, you could give up, but what would happen if you pushed through? What would happen if you did the next thing, and giving that different perspective to kind of get you from that place of self-pity and get you from that place of being stuck.
Yeah. So in conclusion to question 1, what I hear you saying is that having the right type of people on your team or in your social circle can provide a range of benefits for you, both professionally and personally, right? Whether it's inspiration, constructive feedback, having an accountability partner, emotional support. I had a wreck, I need somebody to come talk with me. Or even, we didn't really talk about it, but even networking opportunities. So many times having the right person on your team, it may not be that that person can do what you need done, but they may know the person who knows the person who knows the person that can open a door for you. And so it's not this idea that I want to try to, and I tell people I don't like networking. It's not that I don't like networking. I don't like schmoozing. Right. I don't like the idea that I'm trying to be friends with you to get something from you. But there is nothing wrong with having natural friendships and relationships whereby we have opportunities come to us by way of those friendships. And to me, that's a little different. Don't be my friend because you want to get to know Pastor Sean, or you want to get to know Nitra or Ralph. Be my friend because you're my friend. And then as a result of that, I give you access to the people who I have in my life.
I'm glad you said that because I actually had that in my notes and I didn't say it, but I think that's part of building that team because they expose you to their knowledge, but they also expose you to their network. Yeah. And so we've heard people, get caught up in the right crowd. It's like, man, they just seem to have this connection and this person opened this door and they introduced them to them and now they're in this position. And so to me, networking is really powerful from that perspective. I'm not let's go and turn. I was actually having a conversation with a client. I said, I'm probably not going to pass out business cards. And that to me typically doesn't give the results we're looking for, but forming genuine relationships with people, I think that's really powerful because I know people now and I'm going, I know so-and-so. Like it'll blow my mind that I know whoever, but I know them because I knew or I know somebody else. Yeah. I have access to this person because I have access to this person.
Yeah. And, there's some research out there that says that we're only 7 people away. I think they may say it now as 8 people away from anybody in the world that you know somebody who knows 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 the person you need to know. Yep. We're 8 steps away from, and if you think about it in that perspective, that's how small the world really is. I like what Vita said. She said that connections win over networking. And that's true. Making genuine connections is so much more important. So we've talked about the importance, right, of having the right people. Now let's talk about what happens when you don't. So let's think about this and let's, for the sake of helping people, talk about what happens when you have the wrong people on your team. And just maybe some of the things that could negatively impact you both professionally and personally and in your development. So what are some things we talked a little bit about the positives, but what can happen when you got the wrong people on your team?
Well, I think it really is the same thing as the positives, just flipped around. Your network is still going to influence what you deem as acceptable. Yeah. They're still going to introduce you to their knowledge and their network, so all of those things are really still the same. It's just a different path that it's going to take you down. If I start hanging around people who do drugs all the time, I'm going to meet more people who do drugs.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just natural. And then it begins to be acceptable. And I go, you know what? This is technically a prescription drug. So I could just go ahead and take it because I am a little stressed right now. And then I start doing that's more acceptable. Right. And I start doing things. And pretty soon my life looks like it's not my life at all. It's unrecognizable because I was exposed to the wrong path. I had a person I was talking to once, and she said she was talking about being in a relationship and leaving an unhealthy relationship. And she said, but all men cheat. She said, my grandma got cheated on. My mama got cheated on. I got cheated on. She said, all my uncles cheat. So she's just going through her network was filled with all these men who actively cheat on their wives. So she said, why would I leave this person to go to somebody else who's going to treat me the exact same way? And I went, well, I guess if that's your circle, I mean, I can see why that's your perspective. I said, I happen to know that there actually are some really good people who don't cheat on their spouses, right? And so that's the to me the power of being around the wrong group, because they begin to show you the limitations, whereas the positive begin to say, hey, this is the how far you can go higher and higher, and then negative is like, yep, let me show you just how low you can go.
She need to listen to what's his name, Charlemagne the God. He said black men don't cheat.
I'm not gonna say she needs to listen to Charlemagne.
No, but that's so true, because your environment's working on you, right? And think about that. Having the wrong people on your team, even if you want something better, it can literally drain you of your energy and drain you of your motivation. Because here's a person she's literally saying, why would I leave a current situation, to go to another situation where in my mind, they're going to treat me in this one area, right, both the same. They're both going to cheat, but I know what I got here. What if I go over here and he's cheating and he's worse?
Right.
I mean, because literally that's what she was saying. And so that becomes draining, and anytime that you're in the wrong environment like that, where people are negative or critical or unsupportive, it can drain you of your energy. But as I was preparing for our conversation today, I was thinking about the environment, right? Our environment, our team. And I was thinking, and you mentioned this, you didn't say it this way, but you mentioned it. Our team or our environment is a lot like a social media algorithm, right? Because when I get on TikTok, it doesn't matter what time of day I get on TikTok, I am going to see within the first 2 or 3 videos a cooking video. I'm going to see somebody cooking a steak. I'm going to see somebody making some dish in their kitchen. Why? Because I watch cooking videos. So what does the algorithm do? It keeps flooding me with more and more cooking videos. And it's almost like somebody else can be like, I don't never see a cooking video on my TikTok stream. Well, why is that the case? Yep. Because our environment is feeding us. So like you said, if I hang around with people who do drugs, I'm going to meet a whole lot of people who do drugs. Like, oh, you do this kind? You do that kind? Oh, you do this kind? I'm going to learn all kinds of new stuff about drugs. Well, the same thing is true with our environment, right? And so that is a good point that you made.
I'll also say it'll show you, especially with the negative environment, when you start trying to go higher, it will start to pull you back down. And opposite the positive environment, when you start to go low, they start to pull you higher. You know, if I start saying, hey man, I really don't want to use drugs today. What's wrong with you? You think, they start saying things to cause you to stay consistent. What's that term? Homeostasis, where it's like, no, we need to keep the balance of the way things are. And your environment will either bring you up so that you're staying at a higher level, or it's going to take you to a place where you go, don't you think you're going to get higher than this? Because you go into counseling, you're going to deal with your mental health. You're going to go to counseling and work on your marriage. You're going to get a professional coach to be better in the field. Who do you think you are? And they'll pull you down, or they'll say, hey, you know what you should do? You need to go get you an executive coach, because they can help you to, they're going to either encourage you or discourage you to be better.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned that aspect of it, because the environment, because of how human beings are programmed, we naturally look for the path of least resistance. That's how our brains are naturally wired. We want to avoid pain and we want to go toward pleasure. And typically pleasure is the path of least resistance. And so what happens in an environment like that, if and maybe everybody you hung around did do drugs at first, right? But now you start saying, I don't want to do drugs anymore. Or maybe I don't want to always balance. I don't always want to bounce a check. I don't want to be in financial struggle. Or like my wife and I, we were like, you know what? We don't want to get divorced. I mean, a lot of people in my family were divorced. People in her family were divorced. And we jokingly say sometimes the ones that were married, we clearly know now they didn't like each other. And so it was like, we don't want to repeat that cycle. But what do we have to do? We had to find some people who did life differently. And we talk about the time how when we went to Texas and we were spending the night at some friend's house, and they were a little older than we were, but they had some older couples who were there. And at that, it's funny now because I say older couples, They were probably married 15 and 20 years at that time. And we was like, oh my God, they've been married forever. And here we are at almost 29 now, right? But they talked about how if you want to be married, you have to hang around other happily married people.
Mm-hmm.
And when we took an assessment of our life, we was like, we don't know nobody who happy. I mean, our own friends who had been married the same short period of time that we had was either calling it quits, talk about calling it quits, or had quit. And so we were like, man, we've got to do something different. And when we first started doing that, we did have friends who said things like, oh, y'all just think y'all better than us. No. Well, I mean, that's beside the point. But no,
so
we don't think we're better than you, right? But we want something better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people have to know. She said, "Focus, babe." People have to know. People have to know that I can want better, but if I want better, that environment is going to keep me at that cruise control level.
Yeah,
it's going to try to keep me at that level. So, in the same way that an airplane, when it's flying at say 20,000 feet, if it wants to go up, the pilot has to do something to that throttle. It has to do something other than what's going on to elevate it. And so the same thing is true. If you want more in life, you're going to have to elevate, right, above your current situation.
Right, absolutely.
Because if you don't, it's going to stifle your growth. People are going to give you bad advice. They're going to be bad influences. They're going to say stuff like, girl, if it was me, or man, if it was me. Well, if it was you, you would do what you would do, and I'm going to end up getting what you would have got.
Right. Which is probably not what I want.
Which is probably not what I want. The other thing I think sometimes, we talk about having the wrong people. The wrong people in life can create a lot of drama.
Oh, man.
Conflict. Talk about that a little bit.
I mean, you say we've all seen it, where it's people, they're literally every time you talk to them, they're talking about, well, we went out to dinner and so-and-so did this. And it was like, I go out with my friends to dinner and we never have these big falling outs, and it's all, like you said, constant drama. It's constant. You have to understand, people they thrive in some environment. Yeah. They're going to thrive. And so some environments, they're like, I thrive in drama. And so if you surround yourselves with people who are so comfortable in drama, that they don't actually thrive there, but they're comfortable there. Yeah. But if they're comfortable there, that may seem strange to you that they go out and curse the waitress out at the restaurant. And you may be uncomfortable with that, but they are perfectly fine with doing that. They are perfectly okay. And so you're uncomfortable in the situation, but they're saying, we'll be back next week. And so I just think understanding that your environment is huge. But yeah, those people, I'm always looking like, so you got fired from every job.
Come on now.
It's, at some point you have to look at it and say, am I around people who are constantly filled with drama? Because your friends, if they're the right friends, they'll say, hey, this is you. If the wrong friends, they'll let you blame all the 15 different jobs that fired you. Yeah. I know, man, because they did me like that when I worked up there. No. Y'all both went in there with the same bad attitude, and that's why you both got the same results. So
I mean, they just fired me because I didn't show up for 2 days. I mean, how dare they? It's like you got to have the right kind of people. And I think about what you said about going to a restaurant, and this is so true, because one of the things that will happen if you have the wrong people on your team, and I think this is why God was really talking to me about this in general, about having the right people. If you have the wrong people on your team, it can damage your reputation. And so you think about how, I've talked to so many waitresses and waiters, and do you know the one day of the week that they don't want to work at a restaurant? I know but I want you to say it. What
Sunday,
day of the week?
After church, Sunday. People get out of church.
Sunday. They say the worst time to work is Sunday afternoon, when the church people come in there. Why? Because they're rude. They don't tip worth nothing, and they run the waitresses 100 times. They trying to deliver the food. They ain't put the food down yet. And you talking about, can I get some ketchup and some sour cream and two packages of sugar? Can you let them sit the food down first? Can you control yourself? And a lot of people don't realize that, and they don't realize it because they're not in the wrong environment. But there's so many people at the wrong environment. You get 9 people who go out to dinner and all of them are like that. That is an absolute headache for the waitress or the waiter. And so as a result, you know this, what we do as our tribe and as our church, when we go out, our job is to be the biggest blessing we can be to the people who are working there. We want them to remember us like they remember the other people, but for a different reason. We want them to go, oh, that's the group. That's my table. In fact, Sean and I were somewhere the other day and we got ready to leave. And the little guy who was serving us said, hey, when y'all come back, I'm gonna get y'all. We're like, okay, we don't have no way of knowing who's gonna do that, but okay, not a problem. But not having the right people on your team can damage your own reputation. And think about what that means. You know, I know someone who, and I'll share their story, I won't share their names, obviously, but I know someone who was married. And I'll just say spouse, whether we won't say male or female, but their spouse acted such a fool. It caused the other spouse to eventually end up having to leave the relationship because they were never going to be able to progress in their job, because anytime that one spouse had to be at an event, you know, that was formal, that had, you know, decision makers there, the other spouse was hollering and acting a fool when they got upset. And so having the wrong people on your team can damage your reputation. It can impact you negatively. It can cause numerous things to go awry. It'll get you from being unaligned with your goals and visions. How many people have we seen who were on their way to college and somewhere in high school start hanging with the wrong people? Straight A student, maybe, you know, now they start smoking weed and stop going to class, and or you find people who actually make it to college. They did everything right, AP classes, full scholarship, got with the wrong group of people in college and let that environment start working on them. And then they became a part of that environment and lost the things that they had. Because like you said, you're going to thrive in one environment. Now you may be thriving in a negative way, or you may be thriving in a positive. And so that's really important. And with that being said, then let's look at and talk to me a little bit about, you know, when you have people who maybe come in or maybe bring their kids in to talk with you. I know you did a whole session about minding your mental health for younger kids. What are some of the traits or qualities that people should be looking for in the people they choose to surround themselves with for optimal growth? It can't just be because they got a lot of money, right?
Oh, I hope not.
So let's talk about what that is.
Now, and for me, it's always going to be asking God, should I be around these people, right? So as a believer, I think that has to be paramount. Now, if you're not a believer, you're pretty sure you're not going to ask God. But for us believers, asking God, hey, is this somebody that needs to be in my life? To what degree does this person need to be in my life? But outside of that, I would also say just looking at their integrity, because that's going, like you talked about reputation. If I get with someone, even if they are in a high position at work, but if they don't have integrity, if they do something wrong and I keep associating with them, my name gets caught in that. And it, like you said, it can ruin your reputation. So looking for integrity, because at least I know you're trying to do the right thing. You may miss it sometimes, but I know you're not purposely going to tell me, hey, let's do this thing and run a hustle on somebody. I don't have to worry about those things. So there's peace of mind to me that comes from that. I also look to see if that person has kind of a growth mindset, if they're constantly telling me how something won't work and why it won't work, and as opposed to, well, let's look at how this can work. Let's look at this. What can we learn from this situation? A growth mindset to me is really important if I really want to hang around you more than just on a need to basis, have to do it at work kind of thing. If I want to develop a relationship with you, having that growth mindset. And I was thinking too, I want somebody who's emotionally mature enough to handle my success and my failures. And what that means is there are people who are intimidated by your success. So they're cool as long as you're not as successful as them. But I need to make sure that I'm surrounding myself with people who can still be happy for me when I'm reaching my optimal levels of success. But also if I fumble, they don't just throw me away because now I'm no longer useful. Or, you know, I need that balance of, hey, I got you in the good times to cheer you on, but also when you fall, I'm not just going to leave you. I'm going to encourage you to get back up and be the person you really are created to be. So to me, that emotional intelligence, that I guess that healed person, I know everybody, we may not be 100% whatever, but at the same time, I ought to be able to celebrate when my friends are doing well, and I ought to be able to cover them in prayer and to help cover them when they're having a bad time. I guess the other thing is being knowledgeable about something. When you're talking about, like, I don't like to be around people that don't know nothing.
And don't want to learn anything.
And don't want to learn, right? It's different.
Not to know. It's another thing not to know and be cool with not ever knowing. You know, that wasn't me. Who somebody wrote in the comments, that wasn't me. But yes, no dumb friends. And to me, you know, you said so much in that. It's so good because having a growth mindset is so important, right? You don't want to be the smart. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room, right? You don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but at the same time, you ought to want to be able to have people who say, okay, I don't know that, but I'm willing to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Let's learn X, let's grow together, let's improve. And being around those kind of people can inspire you, right?
Absolutely.
But this idea, you almost preached the message, this idea around a socially, emotionally well individual. Because if you can only be happy for me when you deem that I have less or am doing less than you, are we really friends? Or am I just a person you keep around to make yourself feel good?
Right. Come on.
And so, you know, when I love that when you talk about those kind of qualities, you know, for me, I need people in my life who understand the power of reciprocation. I'm willing to do whatever it is that you need me to do as a friend. But if every time I ask for some kind of help or support, I'm going to get, okay, well, if I have to, all right. If I get the sense that they don't give you joy to help me, then those aren't traits.
Right.
Those are red flags for me, right? Those are red flags for me. I need people to be good listeners. I don't always have to be talking, but I don't always want every time we get together, it's all about you, your problems, your success, whatever it is. It's just all about you. And we talk for 45 minutes, and then you say, all right, be good. But then you never ask me how I'm doing. And a lot of people have, you may find yourself in environments like that, and you feel like, man, I got these 5 friends, and everybody always, you know, want me to talk to them and give them advice, but nobody even asks me how.
Right.
And I think that's important because you talk about minding your mental health. If you don't mind your mental health in that area, you can begin to feel very, very used in those kind of situations.
And I think it's important too that people are not afraid to walk away when relationships aren't healthy.
Yeah.
You know, when we're talking about taming our team, so many times it's like, but I don't have anybody else, so I'm going to stay with this group of people. And I'm like, you know what? It's better to be by yourself and open to growing and having new relationships, because they will come. If you continue to grow yourself, those relationships are going to come. Your tribe is going to, you're going to find that one piece. And again, they're going to open their network to you. But so many times we have people who get stuck in a bad network or a negative network that they never even say, hey, this isn't working for me. So they just get stuck there, and they're not willing to walk away from stuff that's not healthy.
And a lot of times they don't walk away because they don't have a growth mindset. They say, you know, having a bad network is better than having no network at all. And although that's not true, that's that fixed mindset that they have. You know, and people do it in relationships, right? Like, well, you know, and I know it's crazy, but people say, well, a part of a man is better than no man.
Yeah, I think it's Betty White, one of those old blues singers. It's like having a piece of man is. It's like no, keep them pieces over there, and so it's a whole man.
You know, and for me, I gotta have people who got similar goals. You know, it's interesting. You know, I've had friends, and we're going to talk a little bit about how you get out of those situations before we close out. We're going to talk about that. But I've had friends where, you know, we started off the same. But then I told you about exposure, right? If you exposure to something or an experience of something, it's going to breed a new set of expectations. And as that's happened, they haven't had that experience, they haven't had that exposure or didn't want it. And as a result, they may be very, very happy and content with their life where it is now, but that's not where I am. And it doesn't mean that we have to not be friends, but I do have to rearrange my team. And I go back to our sports analogy. Sometimes you got to trade a player. It don't mean that they're not good to be in the NBA.
Come on, that's good.
They're still NBA worthy. They just don't fit my team anymore. We're trying to win a championship, and maybe they fit better on a team that's rebuilding. And so you have to move those kind of things around.
No, that's real right there, because like you said, everybody is not, even they can be good people, it's still not the right environment for you to thrive. It's not, you can go to different churches and it's like, oh yeah, that's a nice church. But this is not where I thrive. This is not where I grow. And somebody else may go over there and they're like, this is the best place. I have the strongest relationship with God I've ever had. Cool. You go where you need to grow. And I'm going to go where I grow. And so I think that's so important. Like that whole aspect of what team is best for me. Because you can just stick, and we've seen them do that when they try to stack the superstar teams. Yeah. And it's like, we just got a lot of talent, and it's too much. We need role players, and people have to know their roles. When you're talking about taming your team, people have to have different roles on that team. It's not just important to have talent on the team. You have to know how to use that talent effectively.
And as a pastor, that's something that the Lord told me years ago, though. He said, listen, FOC is a great church, and it's a wonderful church for a whole lot of people, but it won't be for everybody. And that's okay. And I think sometimes people get into the idea that their church, their way of doing things, their tribe, they're this, they're that. It is the only way. And I think part of that maturing that we talk about is understanding, hey, you can be a great person and you and I still not be having the same similar goals, right? So which leads us into the next question, which is, how then can someone go about identifying the people who are not a good fit for their team or their social circle when it comes to their personal or professional growth? Because it ain't just because we disagree. If you kick everybody off your team who you have a disagreement with, then again, we go back to what we said earlier. You don't need anybody else on your team because they're gonna all think like you.
Right.
So how do you really assess? And this may be something that's in your wheelhouse. When people come to you with all their different issues that they're working through, how do you help them to identify what they should keep and maybe what they shouldn't keep in their life? Are there some basis to evaluating
that? So I always have people, and I do it for myself, just asking questions. And the question is, what kind of fruit do I see from this person? Okay. Again, going back to the sports analogy, I may have somebody who comes in and they're great, but every team they've been a part of, they leave in ruin. I don't need that person on my team. So this person may have great ability, but every coach says they're difficult to work with. Do I want to connect myself with that person? Because even though they have the talent, they may not have the teachability. I don't know if that's a word, but we have to make sure that we're looking at all of that. So what kind of fruit do we see? Do they challenge me to grow? I want to make sure that these people are actually challenging me to grow and not keeping me. I won't say keeping me, not making it comfortable for me to stay in the same place. So again, are they pulling me in a direction, whether that's directly or indirectly? Because people can challenge you to grow, whether they are telling you things or not. You can just see, you know what? This girl done lost 15 pounds and she's working out every single day. That challenges me to get up and work out, even though she never said I have to get up and work out. I just start to see the discipline and I start to see the results and I get inspired, and that challenges me. Again, kind of going back, do they celebrate my success and hold me accountable, yet without condemning me when I fall? Are they able to handle the whole person of who I am? I look at too, how they handle conflict.
Yeah. How they handle conflict is important.
How you handle conflict is going to say a lot about your character. And so I think I'm mad at my friend. Do I now tell all of their business? Just because we don't talk anymore, are they going to expose everything? So I think all of those things are very important when you're looking at who should be a part of my team.
Because a pretty good rule of thumb is if someone told you all the business of their old friend, now that they're not friends, the moment y'all become not friends, they're gonna probably tell all of your business too. Now, here's the thing I want to talk about real quick though. How do we balance not holding people's past experiences against them when we're making new decisions? Because as a rule of thumb, I'm not saying always, and again, you gotta go back and ask the Lord, but as a rule of thumb, if you are my new friend and you was 4 flat tires down with the person who you used to be friend with, and now you're not, and now you're telling me all of their secret dirt that only the two of you ever do. In my mind, my brain is telling me, don't you dare for life tell them anything you don't want told, because they're going to tell it. But then I get conflicted sometimes because I'm like, well, am I judging people based on their past? And if so, I don't want to be judged on my past. So how do we find that balance?
So I think you just answered your question with, what are they currently doing? So if they are currently telling you all of their old friends' business, they haven't changed. Now, if they come to you and say, you know what, I used to be friends with them, and I shared all their business in the past, I learned from that. You know, people will still show you who they are pretty quickly, in my opinion. And so I say just look at what a person's showing you and don't filter that through what you want them to be.
Yeah, because the old me
would do so and so, but you're still doing it.
The old me would throw them a bone and see if that bone got back out there.
Oh, I got you.
I'm like, okay, let me share something with you that I don't care and see if it get back when we ain't friends no more. But that was a question. Someone asked me that one time about, how do I not judge people based on their past, but also make sure when I'm considering who's supposed to be on my team, that I'm making quality decisions about who I need to. Unica J refers to it as different levels of friendship. She refers to it as people who may be, the person who can come to your mailbox, or, like your mailman. He's only going to come to your mailbox. He's not coming to your front door. But maybe your Amazon guy, he comes a little further. He comes down to your front door, or the UPS guy you see all the time. But then you have those people who eventually may come into your living room. You invite them into your office, step in, they sit down. They may have to use your bathroom, maybe depending on how good the friendship is. You got those other people who you may allow upstairs in your bedroom, but those are few and far in between. Very, very deep friendships, right?
Right.
So I always think about that when she teaches that, because I think I want to be sure that I'm letting people progress and not holding their past against them. But at some point, it's okay to say, my team doesn't consist of 50 people in my bedroom.
No.
People in my bedroom. I may have 5 people downstairs, 20 on the porch, and 50 out by the mailbox. And it's okay to build your team that way, understanding where people go on the team.
So I don't think it's judging or holding their past against them when you're looking at what they're currently doing. Like I said earlier, I look at, are you changing? Like I can tell you I used to be promiscuous, and you go, oh, all right. But if I say, girl, yeah, I used to like sleep with 50 men a week. Right. And then you go, oh, okay. You go, well, now it's only 30. Well, I'm glad, that, that you are progressing in that. However, I'm still examining what you're currently showing me. So I think that's not necessarily, in my opinion, that's not holding your past against you. That's saying based on, and it doesn't mean that's a bad person. It just means you have to say, how do I want this person in my life, or do I want this person in my life? And
because that environment is going to work on you,
right?
And it's interesting because we see it happening. Then we'll move on because I know we got to go. But then we see it happening even in traditional relationships where there's and I mean real traditional, man and woman, right? Whatever you want to call it, a traditional marriage, a monogamous relationship, where now there's so much conversation about poly relationships. Now you got people who, for whatever, I'm gonna say it the way I say it, call themselves Christians, who are like, oh, maybe we should be checking out what poly is about. Why? Because your environment is always working on you. So if you're a monogamous couple and you spend all your time around 5 other poly couples, before you know it, that environment is going to be working on you. It may not happen the first week, the first month, or the first year, but eventually you're going to be over there swinging too if you're not careful.
And I think that's the powerful thing that people don't understand. That it's usually never the first time you're exposed to something that you change. And so they start to overestimate their ability to stand strong in whatever situation. Like, oh no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. But pretty soon you, like I said, like with the drugs, you may not, but when you get real stressed and somebody says, here's that so-and-so, you're like, you know what? Sure, go ahead. Now that may be the 50th time you've been offered something.
Right. So here's what I'm going to skip question 5. We kind of answered it. It was just, I'll show it. It was just about what are some strategies that people should use to build a good support system of people around them who positively contribute to their life, growth, and development. I use this phrase all the time on this question when people ask me this. The Bible says, if you want to have a friend, you got to show yourself friendly. So if the number one strategy to building a good support system is learning how to be a good support for somebody else. If you learn to be supportive for someone else, you learn to be kind towards someone else, you learn to be helpful towards someone else, then you start to look at those people who are willing to reciprocate that back to you. If I'm kind to you, if I'm showing up for you, if I'm loaning you money, if I'm helping you out, and I'm doing all these things because we say we're in this whatever kind of relationship, whether it's romantic, whether it's platonic, whether it's familial relationship, but anytime I'm needing something, you ain't nowhere to be found. I don't. You don't offer no help. When I ask, you make me feel like I'm bothering you. Then I realize that may not be a person I need to have on my team to be a good support system.
And I think just having some common social skills of knowing that just because I came into this room does not mean that I'm on the same friendship level as you and somebody who's been friends with for 30 years,
But see, you said the word common. It's just not common because it's true. There are so many people who do that. We've been knowing each other for 20 years. I mean, we done ministry together. Heck, we uprooted our lives and moved to Texas together. We uprooted our lives and came back to Arkansas together. You still travel in from Atlanta. I mean, it's like we have spent a lifetime in terms of relationships together. For somebody to come, and people have done this to me before, and Pastor Sean too, they say things like, well, why you don't treat me like you treat Nitra? Because you ain't Nitra. but people don't have that common sense to go, just because I entered the room doesn't mean that I have the same relationship. So I think that's a good point that you make there.
So when you're trying to build those networks, you can't force it. You can't force something. Just being able to say, hey, this person's teaching me. I may not be able to contribute to the conversation, but I can say, hey, do anybody need water? Let me contribute on some level that I can, but I'll also being able to grow in that environment.
That's that emotional healing you talked about earlier too.
Yeah, they can see me if they need that.
Right. They can see you. They can find you, right? So here's our last question for today. And I appreciate those who are still hanging in there. How should an individual approach removing negative influences in people from their social circle or their team without causing unnecessary conflict or hurt feelings? We live in this age now where folks talk about my cutoff game strong. I mean, you see people wearing T-shirts. They love to talk about how strong their cutoff game is. I can forget you before I thought about you. I mean, all these different sayings. But how can we maturely approach this when you've made the determination, done all the things we've talked about in question 1 through 5, right? What can I do, or how do I do it when I need to remove someone out of my social circle? People ghost people nowadays, but we know that creates trauma too. And it's also kind of passive aggressive.
Very.
So as a counselor, what would you tell someone who comes to you and says, hey, I've evaluated all these things you talked about. I've asked the Lord. I've looked at the pros and cons. I'm headed in this direction. They keep trying to pull me down back to this same level. I know I want more. What do I need to do so that I can mitigate any unnecessary conflict or hurt feelings. Not that there won't be some, but how can I mitigate it?
No, so I think that's the thing you just said at the end, unnecessary conflict and hurt feelings, because recognizing that there still may be some conflict and some hurt feelings. You're not responsible for how they take that. But I think so that I think that's key, because sometimes it's like, well, I just won't do it because I don't want to hurt feelings. But the other thing is to say exactly what you said. Hey, right now in my life, I'm really focusing on growing in this area. And so there are certain behaviors that I no longer want to participate in. So you never attack the person and say, you suck. You don't help me out. You didn't attack them. You said these behaviors. Don't attack.
Okay.
Yeah, you're saying these behaviors I will no longer participate in. And they could be as simple as, hey, I don't want to gossip about other people. It also could be, I don't want to drink anymore. I don't want to, whatever those things are, you're saying, hey, I don't want to participate in these behaviors. So if that type of thing is going to be happening, it's not that I don't love you, but I'm no longer interested in living that lifestyle or participating in those things. And as you grow and you're constantly not doing those things, people will naturally fall off, because I don't really want to hang. If I'm smoking all the time and we used to smoke, I don't really want to hang with you if you're telling me you don't want to smoke anymore.
Yeah.
So it can kind of I won't say take care of itself, but to some degree, they'll naturally start to pull away anyways. But I think having that direct conversation of these are the things or the behaviors and mindsets that I no longer want to participate in. Now, again, they may recognize that they are doing these things and take that as a slight, but you never insulted them. You didn't degrade them or put them down. That's how I say.
And one of the things I hear you saying too is that this should be a precursor to I'm no longer going to be in this relationship. It should be a conversation about, because it could be they go, okay, well, I won't gossip anymore around you, or I won't smoke anymore around you, or so there should be some conversation I'm gathering as I'm talking through. I mean, I know there should be. I'm saying this for the people who are watching. There should be a conversation around I should be clear about my goals, my values, and my expectations going forward before I make the decision that this relationship is just no longer viable.
Right.
Because sometimes people feel like you threw them away and you never even gave them a chance. They never even knew. I mean, you were smoking weed with them on Wednesday. So now
you went to church on one Wednesday night.
Days from now you're talking about you ain't want to do this no more. And I ain't, and if I choose to do it, like, where'd this come from? So there should be a conversation about that first. I'm here.
Yeah, like I said, I just think sometimes we push things off too long.
Yeah.
But the other, like when we do have that conversation, hey, I just really want to grow, and these are some things that I don't want to participate in. But sometimes it's not just specific behaviors. Yeah. It can be, if you are a negative person.
Yeah.
If you're constantly just always like, what I've noticed that when I bring something positive, it's usually met with some negativity. I really want to do this. Now, this is, if they change, you could possibly keep the relationship. But if you're saying, I don't care what they do, I'm cutting it off. You can just say, hey, I'm choosing to do this. And right now I don't feel like this relationship is healthy for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about, I think, tone and also what you're saying, because you can say something like, well, I've just decided to seek out a more supportive environment. Well, okay, that may be true, but the way you say that to someone doesn't necessarily express appreciation for the relationship. And I think that you can learn to grow and mature, because this is one of the areas I've worked on over time. I think about my first administrative job I ever had. If I could go back and do that over, there would be so many hurt feelings that wouldn't have been hurt, because I've learned how to express appreciation for the relationship, but also to express what my needs are, what my goals are, and what my expectation is without putting another person down. Right.
Yeah. And I think you can do that with, like you said, without putting other people down. You also can do that in a way that is not condescending. You can simply like, hey, I appreciate and show appreciation. I appreciate all the times we hung out, getting high. I appreciate all the times we did these things, because that's where I am right now. These are some things and sometimes it may just be I'm really focusing on some other things, so I'm just not going to be available.
Yeah. One of the questions that came up in the comment section, Nate asked, do we have any responsibility to those people to bring that to them? If he's talking about our feelings and all how we've changed, I think we do. I think before you terminate a relationship or a friendship, or before you decide to cut it off, I think you do owe people. If you call them a friend, if it's someone you really say you've been rocking with, and we know that relationships change. Nothing stays the same. The only constant is change. Changing is the only thing that is constant. Yes, I think you do owe those people a conversation, and exactly what you talked about, Nitra, whether or not you determine this is a relationship I can salvage or whether this is a relationship that I'm just done with, right? Because once you've had the conversation, it's a lot like what you said. I think you then have to start to limit the contact gradually. I talk about making space. If I've had this kind of conversation, I said, hey, this is the direction I'm going in. And if you start to say things like to me, oh man, you're dreaming too big. And I've had somebody tell me that before, you're dreaming too big. I reshuffle you as far as where you are in my tribe. It doesn't mean we're not friends anymore. It doesn't even mean that I don't want to be friends with you. I do have the conversation and say, look, the current level that I'm living, even though you say it's great, I want more. I expect more. God promises me more. So if you don't, that's cool. But when we're together, I don't want you to say to me that I'm dreaming too big. I don't like that. I'll just say it like, maybe I say it like that. And then they go, okay, cool, whatever. But then I start to limit some of our contact because I'm never going to stop talking about my big, hairy, audacious goals. I'm just not going to do it. And so if me talking about me paying my house off, if me talking about paying for college without student loans, if me talking about taking a vacation, if I talk about only flying first class, if I talk about giving out scholarships to kids where I ain't asking nobody for support, I'm out of my pocket, I'm paying for one kid to go to college for 4 years. If I start to talk about that kind of stuff and you get tight in your chest about it because you think I'm dreaming too big, I have to start to limit my contact with you because I don't want to injure you by talking about my big, hairy, audacious goals.
No, I think that's key because sometimes we're ready to cut off when we really just have to reposition.
Yes.
I think there are times
say that again. Say it again. I'm gonna be quiet. Say it again.
No, I just said sometimes we're cutting off when we just have to reposition.
Ooh, that's good.
And if I'm cutting off everybody, I'm not gonna have anybody. So
or everybody like me.
Right, or everybody just like me, and there's not going to be a lot of diversity in that mindset. Right. And so being able to say, okay, is this a cutoff situation? Because there are some traumatic, real toxic situations, but a lot of times we say we have to cut them off because we lack the skill to actually be able to say, how can I navigate this conversation so that I just put you in a different position?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And listen, I know we've been about an hour and 15 minutes or so. I appreciate you stepping in here with me today. I knew we'd have a good conversation about this because we talk about this. We talk about this when we're together, when we're vacationing, when we're having dinner. We're talking about taming our team because we believe so wholeheartedly that our environment is always working on us. We want to make sure we're in the right environment. So those of you who joined us today, listen, just as a reminder, you can join Minding Your Mental Health on Thursdays at noon Central, 1 Eastern time. You can go to Tanitria Williams' professional page or her personal page. She streams it from there. She has different guests on. She mentioned earlier, if you're just joining us, that this is Mental Health Awareness Month. And that as a result, she's going to be answering questions. I don't know, Nietzsche, if you already have all your questions there.
Or I don't. I still want people to send them in.
How would they send you some questions?
You can just hit me up on inbox. You can also email me at Tanitria, which is my first name, at gmail.com.
Let me take this down so they can see the spelling of it. There you go.
So, yeah, that's important.
Yeah, right. It's not 10 or 3.
It's not.
And so tell them one more time how they can send those to you, those questions.
So you can email that at tanitria@gmail.com, or you can send me an inbox on social media on Facebook. That'll work.
Yeah. And so tune in because there may be a question somebody asked that you wanted to ask, and she'll be taking the time to answer that. And as you can see from our conversation today, Pastor Nitra is a highly skilled, highly qualified healthcare mental health professional. And she can help you regulate your mind. She is not nearly as petty as I am. So if you need less pettiness, you can talk to her and she will help you. She has worked me through some issues from time to time and been a referee for me and Pastor Sean when we didn't see eye to eye. So listen, if you need some kind of counseling, and Nitra, I don't want to overstep, but aren't you a certified marriage counselor as well?
So I'm an LPC, which is a licensed professional counselor.
Okay.
I can work with marriages and individuals and families and all of that.
Okay, so she got you covered, whatever you need. So make sure that you check her out. Nitra, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed this.
Me too. Somebody said a couple of times, they said these are really good questions. So
when I read through them, I went, "Oh, these are good."
Well, good. I didn't disappoint there. So again, just as a reminder, EdTalk is here every Tuesday, 12 noon Central Standard Time. It is EdTalk with your boy, Pastor Strick. I appreciate those of you who have tuned in. Listen, if you haven't, do me a favor before you leave. Go ahead and share this broadcast one time or one more time if you haven't. I'll be back here next week. Remember, tame your thoughts, tame your tongue, tame your emotions or your temperament. And for whatever you do, please tame that team. Make sure you get the right people on the right spot on your team so you can live out your best life. All right. God bless you all. I appreciate it. Nitra, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. You have made history because this is the very first person I've had on EdTalk. Take care. Bye-bye.